Welcome back, folks. I'm Frizz, and today I'd like to take some time to talk about rules. Well, to narrow that down a bit, since I always talk about rules on this channel, I want to talk about what rules I like using in the Pathfinder 2e games that I play in that aren't core parts of the system. Pathfinder 2e is a fantastically designed system, but it certainly isn't perfect, and I find that some particular changes can actually help me enjoy myself more. Pathfinder 2e is a finely balanced system with a lot of different moving parts, and I really do recommend playing the game without any modifications first, especially if you want to make large sweeping changes to the mechanics. After all, 2e is a well-made game, and it doesn't need house rules to fix it, unlike some other systems that may or may not be out there. But anyway, let's talk about free archetype. Free archetype is an official variant rule that Paizo released, and I'd say that it's probably the most popular variant rule out there. Essentially, all PCs get an additional feat at every even level that they can only use on archetype feats, meaning that they can grab flavorful archetype options without giving up the power and flexibility that normal class feats can provide. Basically, now whenever you're leveling up, say, Archaeologist Wizard, you don't have to decide between taking a Wizard feat or an Archaeologist archetype feat. You just get both. I adore this variant because it basically allows you to take archetypes that fit your characters super well, even if they are pretty bad mechanically. Like, the Celebrity archetype really doesn't give you much mechanically, but it's super fun. It can be a little hard to justify to yourself giving up a class feat that might save your life or the life of someone else in the party, but if it's free, then I'm going to take it in a heartbeat if it fits my character. My one reservation and warning about free archetype is that it can affect the balance of the game somewhat. The key operative word in that sentence is can, since how much free archetype actually impacts a campaign dramatically depends on how people are using it. Like I said earlier, the Celebrity archetype isn't particularly powerful mechanically, so if I use free archetype to get the Celebrity archetype, and someone else in the party uses free archetype to grab the Rogue multi-class archetype, then they're more likely to be powerful. My best recommendation is to sit down with the entire table and come up with a list of archetypes that people can pick from for free archetype, because that way you can get things that actually match the story and tone and all that. You can also just let people pick whatever the hell they want, since the actual difference in power based on free archetype choices isn't gonna be that big, especially when you compare the power gaps that can appear in other systems just naturally. I guess I technically have another warning. If your party is new to the system or doesn't really like having to worry a bunch about character creation, then free archetype does add more choices. So I guess that is something to keep in mind, but you don't really level up that much anyway. Like, if you can somewhat comfortably make a PC in 2e, I think that you can make one with free archetype, but I don't know everyone's comfort levels. The other variant rule that I want to talk about is automatic bonus progression. Automatic bonus progression is ultimately incredibly simple. Pathfinder 2e expects that the party will get certain items as they level up that give a straight up boost to the numbers on their character sheet, like a bonus to armor class or to their damage. If they don't get these items around the levels where they're expected to get them, they're going to have an incredibly horrible time, and honestly, you're probably going to have to start burying PCs. Automatic bonus progression just gives those bonuses automatically to all PCs when they level up, in exchange for just PCs getting a bit less gold, which you don't actually get less gold because you would be spending the gold on these items anyway, so it's a net gain. Now all that you have to worry about is not having to do all the boring shopping and getting to the fun shopping, which is the stuff that is actually fun to think about. Honestly, I don't really think that there's a downside to using this rule. That actually makes loot feel more interesting in my mind, since special magical weapons will stay relevant no matter what without needing you to upgrade their fundamental runes. And you don't have to pawn everything off that's actually interesting to get the boring gear that you need to survive. Like, being a fighter with a cool magic sword is fun, but being a fighter with multiple magic swords that are distinctly different for distinctly different situations is way, way cooler in my mind. Doing more damage with weapons because your character is just good with weapons feels better to me than just dealing more damage because you have a magic sword that hits harder. It makes the character feel special rather than just their gear. Also, take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, as I'm not a GM, but I think that automatic bonus progression makes things easier for GMs. Since parties do legitimately need these items to survive, sometimes it feels like you have to provide them with loot or money even if it doesn't really make sense, because otherwise they're going to be killing player characters. Like, at high levels, the party is expected to get super high level items that cost horrendous amounts of money, but realistically, like, it's gonna be really hard to find those. Most shops aren't going to be selling swords that cost more than the entire town they're based in, after all. With automatic bonus progression, you don't have to have magic marts all over the place where parties can get the items they need to live, so you are free to just freestyle a bit more. Plus, they're actually more likely to keep the cool magical loot that you give them rather than selling it off to pay for someone's armor rune. Now let's talk about some of the non-official rules that Paizo hasn't come up with that I really like. First off, I like playing in games where the lore skill that you get from your background increases in proficiency automatically as you level up, just like as if you'd gotten it from taking the additional lore skill feat. I really do love the lore skill, but I don't particularly like spending normal skill increases on it because you only get 9 of those from levels 1 to 20, and I don't really want to spend it on a super specialized skill. Sadly, that leads to the skill that you get from your background gradually getting less important and relevant as you level up. And it can easily get to the point where you're better off using society instead of, like, underworld lore as a detective, because your society is like master proficiency with a +2 item bonus. It's just straight up better than underworld lore, which sucks, because underworld lore fits the character better. I just prefer it when these lore skills scale automatically, and believe me, this is not going to dramatically affect any game balance. My last house rule that I like is the simplest one in the video, but it's also probably the one that will stop the most disappointment. I think that if you use a hero point to reroll a d20, then you shouldn't be able to get a worse result than your first roll. Basically, take the higher of the 2 d20s. Failing a saving throw against a super dangerous spell, then spending a hero point to reroll and ending up rolling a 1 feels horrible. And I'm not playing the game to go out of my way to feel horrible all of the time. It's pretty minor, and it's not that often that it's really gonna affect you, but I mean, they're hero points. They should make you feel heroic. So yeah, those are my preferred house rules. There really aren't that many of them, and most of them are officially from Paizo, but that's because 2e is a legitimately well-designed system, and I don't have that many major problems with it. Obviously, these are my personal opinions, and not objectively correct for everyone, but I think I've got good taste. Thanks for watching. I don't really have that many house rules for this system, but boy should you see my preferred list of changes to Pathfinder 1e. I am curious though, what house rules or variant rules do you use at your tables? A lot of the groups I'm in run things exceptionally by the book, so I'm curious to see what other people use. Let me know in a comment down below, and subscribe while you're down there, or something, I guess. Regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life.